So our conversation this week, and when you sent your notes, I think it's brought to us by UEFA this week. It's like UEFA here. So it's like the shopping list is like UEFA 1 and 2. We did talk uh, outside of your segment last week. I just kind of glossed over it a little bit about where a club in particular wants €5 billion because of something that didn't happen. What's the details here?
Yeah, so look, we know that the much talked about Super League that was here in 2021, spearheaded by Real Madrid, Barcelona, and Juventus. A few deals have gone on in the last few weeks, stroke months, which sort of saw Barcelona allegedly resign from A22, the sports management company behind the Super League. And Juventus pulled out a couple of months ago due to their financial crisis and due to be hit with some financial miscalculations again in January. It's not saying that there's a timely pullout from the Super League, but however, Real Madrid were left to stand alone. Now, obviously, in the Spanish courts, or I say obviously, Real Madrid have been still conducting affairs against UEFA, and the Spanish court upheld Real Madrid's recent ruling that UEFA has acted illegally by basically violating competition law, specifically Articles 101 and 102, which is a treaty on functioning of in the EU on controlling and dominating its abusive position. So anyway, it's alleged that Real Madrid are claiming around 4 billion, 3.4 billion in English pounds in lost revenues. And they're saying it's because they're the revenues that would have been generated if the Super League had officially been launched. So the court confirmed that there was a serious infringement of EU competition law by UEFA, and that has led the door to open. Now, this is also precedent as Google was actually fined 2.4 billion for similar competition law violation, breaches, etc. And this could be used as the benchmark. Now, what Real Madrid are also arguing was that last year in 2024 and throughout of 2025, that Real Madrid actually proposed some changes to the current Champions League format where they wanted to divide the 36 teams up into two groups of 18. One of them, Group 1, which contained the 6 champions of the top 6 leagues with the 12 best teams. And in Group 2 would be the remaining 18 teams. And then they would continue with the same 8 rounds, etc. But one of the reasons why UEFA have turned it down is because they have just basically, I think we've just seen them form a new joint venture with UEFA, ECA, stroke the new European governing body, as we touched upon it last week, but with Relevant Sports, right? And Relevant Sports now going to be controlling the media rights for all their European competitions and other competitions from 2027 to 2033. That also coincides with FIFA's new arrangement with DAZN, right? They somehow sponsored them £1 billion last year for the Club World Cup. And conveniently, now they're partnering up with FIFA Plus TV, and they're going to be relaunching a whole range of new services across the world, obviously to help Saudi Arabia promote their influence, etc., etc. So that's where we are at the moment. I won't put it past Real Madrid to succeed and to reach a compromise, with them being the only club, well, say unofficially still linked with the A22. And I say that lightly because I don't think any club has officially denounced itself on the registration company details of the A22, but we have seen that a number of clubs have publicly announced the verbal statement saying that they have come away from the Super League. But let's see. If Real Madrid are successful, I wonder how many other clubs might come out of the woodwork and consider their position.
Yeah, to your point, Relevant CEO Daniel Silman serving as exec chair of the new company, Relevant president and partner Boris Gartner serving as CEO, based in London, additional offices to follow New York, Miami, Doha, Qatar, Neil, Switzerland, and Southeast Asia. They have recruited a dedicated leadership team, and this is from Sports Business Journal, for the new business that includes former team marketing manager, director of media rights, Oliver Holland, as chief media rights officer. Team marketing, where Holland spent 12 years, managed commercial rights for UEFA's men's competitions for 3 decades before losing the U.S. business to Relevant beginning this past season for the rights beginning 27 and 28. You have a former PGA Tour EVP is now CCO. Former DAZN finance director is CFO. Former F1 chief counsel as chief legal officer. A former Disney VP of communications as chief communications and marketing. Former DAZN VP, SVP of people and reward, Georgie Cleve as chief people officer. Former Heineken Global Sponsorship lead Benjamin Blanco as commercial strategy, partnerships, sponsorships, and licensing. And former DAZN EVP Global Head of Rights Tom Burrows as Director of Strategy and Partnership Operations. Expected to begin the sales process for the next 2 commercial cycles each this summer. In the U.S., CBS, meaning Paramount, has the English language rights locked up through 29-30. Televisa, though, however, Spanish language only runs through 26-27. So that might be the next date on the calendar, at least when it comes to rights in this hemisphere, 26 and 27 for the Spanish rights.
And don't forget, Relevant Sport is controlled by Stephen Ross, right? The owner of the Miami Dolphins, etc. So, he tried to launch the summer series with the Premier League over here. So he's got quite a dominant position anyway, and he has proved to be quite successful at what he does. So, I'm not surprised that sort of got in the way with the new proposals, i.e. from Real Madrid, etc. But it'll be interesting to see which direction this takes. Are they just looking for some healthy compensation, or is there some serious movement to restructure the Champions League even further? Now, my sources suggest that there is a little bit of that they're happy with the Champions League format. No one's denying that, but they are liking the fact that there could be more games. So I wouldn't be surprised if another 2 games get added to this competition in the next couple of years. I would say, though, by 2029, I think that's when we'll see it.
Nothing like adding more games and more revenue, stuff that you can pull apart to the side and sit there and say, well, hey, if you want to bid on this first premiere of the cycle, hey, this is a separate deal if you want the kickoff.
Exactly.
All of the splintering of the games to come up with added revenue and added IDs.
You got the new what we have in here, the Super Cup type thing where you've got the winners of the Champions League versus Europa League winners over in UEFA. That's going to be expanded to 4 teams, where we're going to see both finalists of the Champions League, Conference League, Europa League, and play a 14 tournament somewhere over in America come 2029.
All right, so what's next on your list of things to discuss, sir?
Well, while we're continuing with the theme of UEFA, we've got another £20 million potential lawsuit against UEFA by a company called Match Vision, a Chilean sports consultancy which claims to have created this Champions League format. I think there's been many people in their own bedrooms that have created an innovative format, playing computer games, etc. But hey, apparently they copyrighted this back in 2006, and they actually called it the POTS concept. And now they're seeking £20 million in damages. And this is expected to go to Switzerland court in Lausanne, actually now, and we're probably going to receive a judgment come February, March time next year. Interesting. That it doesn't seem like it's the most unique format that's out there, but somebody had claimed to, I suppose somebody had to create it, right? So the fact they had the foresight to patent it, to copyright it, that deserves kudos in its own right.
Yep. The Athletic has its Match Vision's case transferred to a court in Lausanne, Switzerland, where UEFA is based. They have not yet, as of the end of the month, been formally notified of the action, but once it is, UEFA gets 20 business days to respond. So basically a month of actual calendar. And so there's a connection with the ESL cases, that it was that breakaway threat in 21, where you had the revamp, Swiss model, all those kinds of things, the POTS concept. Chile in 2006, and it also claims they presented the idea to UEFA in 2013. I mean, literally, this legitimately sounds to me like, if you come up with if you collaborate on a song or something like that, and you claim to be the writer of the tune, and the person that might have gotten the lyrics sits there, and they take the lyrics and they turn it into this really successful song. You've got to figure out, okay, I have to prove that I was the one that wrote the song in the first place. That's what it sounds like to me here.
Yeah, I suppose that's why we have copyright law, right? So somebody has probably logged this somewhere back in 2006, and if there's some evidence that this is identical. I mean, it's got to be identical, right? You can't just take a piece of this competition and claim it's yours, because it's got the underbelly of pretty much every competition format that's ever been, So I'm not too sure how successful it's going to be. But again, some copyright, there may be something there, so maybe they won't get the full compensation. But who's to say that doing this might not get them £1 million, which is more than what they probably would have got.
Match Vision's claim is exactly for €20,005,551, and the gentleman who is coming forward with the suit, he wants €200,000 personally, also asking for interest on the sums for last year, this year, next year. And so they're anticipating that UEFA is not going to just kind of sit there and say, well, yeah, we'll go ahead. No, this one looks like this one might be headed to the courts for a while. That's my gut.
I would, if I was UEFA, I'd change the format. Not massively, but just tweak it, right? And then, you can just, if there is to be a case, then you only have to pay out in 2 years rather than 5, 10 years or lifetime. So I'm not too sure where that's going to go, though. But let's see. Either way, it's going to dent the purse, and no doubt the people that will miss out will be the foundation arm of UEFA, FIFA, etc. That's where they take the money from.
Premier League, and you had mentioned to me that there might be some changes coming to the rules of engagement when it comes to PSR, profit and sustainability. What are you hearing there?
Yeah, so actually this next week or so, we're going to see the Premier League and its voting members. For those that don't know, the members of the Premier League are its 20 owners, and we need 14 votes to change anything. And there's 2 financial models being proposed. One of them has got a lot of support, the other one hasn't. But the first one that's got the support is what we call SCR, the squad cost ratio, which basically is going to limit spending to 85% of the club's total revenue, which they can allocate on wages, transfers, agent fees, etc., etc. Now, at the moment, it's we've got this 105. We've got PSR, which means that owners can lose 105 million over 3 years, providing the owners guarantee 90 million, 30 million a year, so they can attribute 15 million loss against the club. But in this one, basically, it's a similar concept to UEFA, where UEFA, for those clubs that are in UEFA competition, which is currently 9 in the Premier League, they have to conform to 70% of their ratio. Well, this allows clubs to spend a little bit more. The idea is it's supposed to try and breed a little bit more competitive balance within the Premier League, but the problem is with this, it's still, when the bigger clubs are generating 600 to 700 million and you're allowed to spend 85% of that on your squad, if the clubs are generating 678 million and the middle clubs are only generating 200 million, then it's just going to breed competition imbalance, right? So that's model number 1, whereas model number 2 sort of favours the other end of the table and actually restricts the top clubs. So what they're sort of predicting here is something called the TBA, which is top to bottom anchoring system, which is based on the broadcasting money that the bottom team will earn in the Premier League. So at the moment, it's 110 million, so a ratio of times 5. So clubs will be allocated 510 million. Now, that will benefit all the clubs up from 20 all the way up to about 6. And then, but what that does on the big clubs like Liverpool, Arsenal, Man United, Man City means that they won't be able to compete with the big clubs of Europe, right? Because we've started to see their clubs now. Real Madrid, Bayern Munich yesterday, they've sort of announced that they're turning over €1 billion now euros in revenue. So if they're already at that, I mean, obviously the big clubs are only concerned about UEFA, the Super League, stroke better competitions there, whereas the clubs in the Premier League want to try and bridge that gap and have that opportunity to compete in those competitions, right? So they need a bigger gap. So Premier League is at a real, I say, fragile state at the moment, because I'm not sure they're going to find a model that's going to suit both, but they're going to have to come to some sort of compromise at the moment. I mean, listen, if me and you were in the room and we were sort of suggesting ideas, and I'm in favour of creating a once every, we have a leap year, right, every 4 years, maybe a model like that where it allows club owners just to spend an extra 100, 200 million if they want to every 4 years, then that way it helps potentially bridge the gap. And as long as they don't attribute it to the club, maybe it gives them the opportunity to show that they really do want to invest and bridge that gap in the competition element. But I suppose governance here is to basically encourage sustainability. We don't see many clubs in the Premier League suffering from that. We had Portsmouth back in the early part of the century, but since then, any clubs that get into distressed state, they tend to get bought out for a healthy sum anyway. So, this is an interesting one because the Premier League wants to stay top of the curve, right? And that means in Europe, and it's in terms of its broadcasting deals on a global scale as well. And it needs that competitive balance within that league. Yes, you've got 6 clubs that are competitive financially, but the others are not. So how do they bridge that gap? And that's, every league's got that challenge. I get that, but yeah, you're trying to make a model which is. I mean, the bottom line is as well, John. If you think about it, I mean, the Premier League is the golden circle to pretty much Europeans' ecosystem financial model for the next year, right? Because without their £3 billion that they spend on average every year now in the transfer market. The European ecosystem needs the Premier League to be competitive in that area. So, they've got to try and find, I suppose, a system there. Otherwise, the rest of Europe could suffer more than the Premier League clubs,
And, well, then let me play devil's advocate here a little bit, where you have those big 6. But then you have a situation like we have at Bournemouth, where Bournemouth in their scouting system has found those diamonds in the rough, those undervalued players that they bring in under Andoni Iraola, and then they're there for a year or two, and then they get to sell them on for massive amounts to other clubs. You pretty much can look at Kirkesh as a recent example, and that Semenyo will be an example coming up in a couple of years. So is there any thought to individual responsibility, regardless of where whether it's the an SCR, the squad cost ratio, or the TBA? If you're not in that top 6, to just sit there and go, well, then scout better,
Yeah, but the other side is, the other side of that coin, John, is that yes, you can credit Bournemouth, Brentford, and Brighton. We call them the 3 Bs, right, for their innovative statistical models that they've got for transfer, and that definitely is part of their revenue generation model. But at the same time, these clubs are having to sell these assets, right, because they've got to try and bridge that gap. So, on one hand, it's a real slow catch-up, right, because they produce these talents, and then they can't keep them, because they've got to sell them in order to bridge that gap. So they're moving them on. And, we've seen with Brighton that Chelsea tend to favour Brighton players in recent years. And, Bournemouth, yes, they've started to sell. Brentford have been doing this for a few years as well. So, yeah, we applaud that innovation. But surely, if we want to make the league competitive, these clubs have got to keep hold of those players and then to see, what they could actually do if given 2 or 3 years together, how much they can develop that cohesion on the pitch to be competitive. So, yeah, but I get it. That is part of football, and it has been part of football for the last 100 years. There is a pecking order, whether we like it or not. And if Real Madrid come knocking on your door for your player, then yeah, you're going to be, you're going to have to succumb to it. As we all have over the last few years. So it's a hard one, isn't it? But unless you operate, maybe there's something in the MLS, right, where they've got this budget restrictions, etc. But I mean, the problem is, we propose those salary caps over here, and then the players are going to take you to court anyway because they want to earn their maximum corn. So clubs one way.
Restraint of trade, absolutely. Yeah. That was going to be the lawsuit. You mentioned sustainability of clubs and such, and keeping yourself afloat. Circling back to Sheffield Wednesday, mentioned on Monday's show, where Mike Ashley is looking maybe to kick the tires on Sheffield. Basically, he gave, and what you have to do in this 28-day window that we've been discussing is you have to have proof of funds to Begbie's trainer and sit there, and then they can sit there and sign off on you. And so Ashley's like, well, tell you what, I'll do 10 million when they're kind of looking for 50. This kind of seems like this is something that's right up, Ashley's alley, where you sit there and you want to offer pennies on the dollar, try to get something, and then maybe have it for a couple of years and flip it. How serious do we take somebody like a Mike Ashley, where it's like, yeah, I'll offer you 10 when you're looking for something bigger?
Well, we know what Mike does. I mean, I don't know him personally, but we know what he does. He buys distressed assets, right? He knows a potential value opportunity. So if he's going to try and get it for as cheap as chips, then we know what he's going to do. He's going to run it financially sustainable. He's not really going to invest in it. The problem with Mike Ashley was that, Sheffield Wednesday needs investment in the training ground. It needs investment in the stadium, and it needs investment in the squad. if he wants to get maximum value on that, he's going to have to upgrade all of those facilities, and that's going to take a little bit more than the 10 million that he's proposing. Now, it may be that the 10 million is the bargain price, and then he's got a plan set out for stadium and renovation and training and squad, etc. Or it might be that he's just chancing his arm. But our understanding is that there's 4 or 5, real serious bidders in there. And we know that John Textor's offered 40 million. So, Mike Ashley has got to up his game a little bit there. But we also believe that there's a couple of American groups that have stayed anonymous at the moment, and they seem to be the front runners. Mike Ashley's just releasing, I think, statements out there to make himself relevant. He's tried to buy a couple of clubs in the last few years. But unfortunately with Mike, his reputation at Newcastle is going to stay with him. I don't think that's going to go away. Listen, I appreciate Sheffield Wednesday fans will go, look, listen, we'll take a Mike Ashley over the current owner. But the reality is Sheffield Wednesday is a good asset. Somebody will buy it, someone will invest in it, and someone will turn that back around again. So, the fans have got to be a little bit patient, and they're in a good position now in the sense of, it's up for sale, and it's going to have new owners by the end of the year.
What else are you keeping your eye on in the next 7 days before we reconvene?
Well, I think, like they said, the big one is we're expecting the Manchester City case obviously that's been due to come out for the last year, right? But they are, the news is sort of murmuring towards an outcome coming in the next few weeks. That's going to probably align with the PSR stroke squad cost rules, whatever goes into that way. And then once that takes off, we're probably going to see, a new wave of investment in multi-club models again. I'm hearing, yes, Liverpool, this, that, but Arsenal are also tinkering now with a second club. So, yeah, I've just had a couple of sources say that conversations are underway, but, it's all NDA at the moment. They don't want to keep it quiet, but hopefully in the next couple of weeks, maybe this time next week, we'll have a bit more murmurings on that. The good news is, since our Mafia story last week, I haven't found a horse's head next to me yet. So maybe because I'm moving around in all these hotels, they can't keep up with me.
There you go. Absolutely. And so we'll keep an eye on Cronky Sports and Entertainment. Absolutely. As always, my friend, it's great to see you. Thanks for the intel as we continue to pursue the economics of sports and multi-club ownership and all of the things that makes the world go around that we need to find out about. As always, my friend, great to see you. We'll catch up with you again next week.
Yeah, appreciate it, John. Thank you.